Hello and welcome back to another episode. Indeed, welcome back to a new year. Yes, it's 2015. And I wanted the first episode of the new year to talk about something which was very important to me, profoundly important to me, and that is the vital role that graphic novels have played in my life. Now, yes, I'm a huge fan of graphic novels anyway, but there's a very good reason for this video, and that is that I'm actually rather profoundly dyslexic. Dyslexic. No irony there. And the point is, I have a problem with letters and some colours. I have some issues with that stuff, and I didn't actually know that this was the case until university. I thought this was just how people saw the world. So I had learned to read despite the problems. I'd learned to read to quite a good level despite these problems, and actually I got through 2/3 more or less of my degree just by working at it. I'd sort of developed coping mechanisms to deal with reading these big heavy texts that you have to come across in universities. But it became more and more apparent, apparently, to my lecturers that there might be a problem. So I was given a test. Without my knowledge, I should state, actually, I thought it was a test for something else, but I was tested for dyslexia and came out positive. And really from then on I had these special things to help me with reading, so like yellow sort of acetate to put over pages and stuff which sort of helped the letters calm down a little bit. But essentially the problem is that the letters float around, and this can actually lead to some really funny things happening. So for example, I don't know, like a couple of years ago I was driving, my wife and I were driving to go camping with friends out in the wilds of the Lake District, and there was a sign on the side of the road that said static caravan sale, and it was written for some reason in orange and red letters, which made me think of fire. Now I think the association between fire, the fact that we were driving along, and the floating letters issue made for a different sign in my head, and that was, it said satanic caravan sale. I was like, what on earth is it? What's a satanic caravan? I imagine you go in, you open the cupboards, and whoo, these ghosts come flying out. So anyway, the point is that it can actually be quite. It can add to your life. It can add to a little bit of surreal humour to proceedings. It's not just a negative. But the point is, anyway, yes, I am dyslexic, and I've always found it really hard to read for pleasure. Lots of my friends in particular are great readers. My wife is a great reader. She reads these big old books for fun, and I've never been able to do that. For me, reading is really hard work, and again, I never really told anyone about this stuff, especially in school and in university, but it was just such hard work that it's just not relaxing. And I never really got into the habit of reading, say, novels for fun and to relax. But it was at a certain point in high school that I sort of realised that actually graphic novels could be the answer. We were actually out shopping in a place called Chester, in a bookshop called Waterstones. It's a franchise bookshop. And in Chester, I believe the shop's still there, I came across Batman Nightfall Part 1. And I love Batman. I'd only ever seen really comics properly up until that point. I didn't realise that they had collected these things together as graphic novels. And I thought, this is brilliant, this is absolutely brilliant. And I took it home, started reading it, got through Part 1 very quickly, and found myself needing to get Part 2 very quickly. And then beyond that, Part 3. And these three books, the Nightfall series in particular, opened up to me a world of possibility, and that is to say that I could read something like a novel, that is to say a long in-depth story, and not have to wade through paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. The pictures sang to me. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, as they say. The stories were good and were engaging, in particular in the Nightfall series. And from then on, really, I became a graphic novel reader, not just a comic book collector, as it were, if you see what I mean. So, for example, Jimmy, the Smartest Kid on Earth, is a really interesting, graphic novel. It's a really interesting tome, really interesting work, and it feels very much as though you're part reading an epic story in these things, but also part engaging with an artist. And the artists, in the case of things like Nightfall, when it's actually different comics that are coming together, you get lots of different artistic interpretations of the same character. And for me, graphic novels sort of saved that part of my reading experience, because I then, in high school, actually went on to read the Nightfall novel. There's actually a novelization of the graphic novel, so I read that, and that was helpful because I knew sort of what the story contained, and I was just able to read it with a bit of anticipation. It sort of took the edge off reading the whole thing, if you know what I mean. And I think that's possibly, as I've already talked about, that's possibly why I was able to get through things like Lord of the Rings. I sort of already knew the story. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's just much more relaxing. There's something actually about the way that the comic is printed, for me at least. I think with everyone it's slightly different, but for me, that just means that actually it's all much easier to read. And I think in particular with the Nightfall books, these older ones, these are from the 90s. Yes, from 1993. With these ones, I think the texture of the paper actually breaks up the harshness of the lines a little bit, and also the colours, and makes it, I don't know, a bit easier to read. It is hard to explain, but I just thought I'd share the vital importance of graphic novels for me personally. They've been so important. And over the years, obviously, I've gone on to collect more and more. I've got, for example, with Batman, Elseworld stories. I've got other comic book series, from Marvel and other DC characters. And no, I haven't abandoned trying to read proper novels, but it's taken away some of the guilt, as it were, that I felt, because I hang around with, I've always hung around with some very ready people, bookish people, clever people, and they're always sort of quoting these things that they've read, or these novel series that they're into, like the Fire and the Ice, is it saga, or Fire and Ice saga, and things like like the Amber Spyglass. That was a thing a few years ago, and I always felt a little bit left out because I didn't have a book to pick up and go, yep, you see, I'm reading this one, and I still feel that to a certain extent, but the ability to read graphic novels really helps me to feel less out of it, and also it actually gives me something to relax with. For example, before I go to sleep, I'm able to look at a story, read the speech bubbles, really get into the story in the same way that people talk about getting into a good book, and I'm getting that experience without it stressing me out, without it being a really hard time. And I don't know, that's kind of all I wanted to say on this topic. It's not the longest video, but I thought it's actually quite an important thing to share. That A, yes, I am dyslexic, but B, that the graphic novels have really saved me from feeling quite so gimped, as it were, or nerfed when it came to my reading skills. As I say, I do still try and pick up a good book every now and then. I do still try and wade through some of these stories, but it is wading through, and I think it will always feel like a chore. And while I'm able to do that very easily with books, for example, for work, or books when I was at university, when I want to relax, I turn to my graphic novels, and I just wonder if that's the same for anyone else out there. So if you have any thoughts or comments, please do comment below. I'd like to hear what you have to say, and maybe just to share your experiences, because it's not easy. It's not been easy dealing with this stuff, and even though, despite the fact for a long time I thought this was just normal, having problems with letters floating on backgrounds, this kind of thing, it didn't make it any less difficult. So yeah, if you have any stories, I'd really like to hear them, and hopefully, I don't know, maybe there are some other people out there who find graphic novels just as helpful. Now, I'll probably talk about the Nightfall series properly in a video at some point, but these books in particular were my introduction to another way of reading a big story in one go, rather than having to buy the comic every week. And I'm so pleased that I came across them. Saved my life in some respects. Well, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but certainly saved my sense of well-being, definitely. Anyway guys, as ever, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.